Hello and welcome to the 180th edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm the professor, Matt Perkins. And a tunnel screen across the Harpeth River from me here in the Music City, it's our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton.
What's up, gentlemen? I am feeling like crap, and I'm freezing. But you know what? You know what's going to warm my heart? Doing the show. So I'm ready to go.
Well, we can't get started without the third amigo in the second city, a man who is thankful for 5-day weekends. It's our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook.
I'm just concerned coach is going to pull an Oregon Trail and die of dysentery.
No, I'm dying of cholera.
Gosh, Josh, get your diseases right. Anyway, we have an early recording date this week because of the holiday. So we're going to flip it up, do it a little bit differently today. We're just going to start by talking about the FCS playoffs. The bracket
Playoffs. Jinx.
We are 86 seconds into the show and already off the rails, folks.
Matt, I mean, you cannot say playoffs without Coach and I doing that.
I'm trying to win the damn game.
We couldn't do diddly poo. I just hope we can win a game.
You want to crown their ass? Crown their ass!
All right, gentlemen, the FCS playoff bracket was released earlier this week. So we're going to spend the first part of our show talking about it. Top 8 seeds in order, and these teams all get byes in the first round. Obviously, number 1, North Dakota State, the heavy favorite. We'll get to them later. Number 2, Weber State. Number 3, Eastern Washington. Number 4, Kennesaw State, followed by South Dakota State, UC Davis, the Maine Black Bears, and Colgate. The other teams making it into the first round matchups will be Montana State versus Incarnate Word, James Madison versus Delaware, Towson versus Duquesne, Wofford versus Elon, Nicholls State versus San Diego, Northern Iowa versus Lamar, Jacksonville State versus East Tennessee State, Southeast Missouri State versus Stony Brook to wrap it up. Josh, I will start with you. Did anything in particular, stick out about the bracket to you, or do you have any, initial takeaways from it?
Well, one is a very bizarre takeaway. First of all, Incarnate Word plays November 24th in their first round game. Iowa State scheduled them next week. So if they beat Montana State, are they going to sacrifice the money and focus on North Dakota State? Or are they just going to say, hey, Iowa State could be a good tune-up for North Dakota State? I don't know. That's kind of bizarre. But another takeaway I had is if you're looking for a story, you're looking for a team to knock off the North Dakota State train that I have a feeling all three of us are going to take. They're by far the best program, and then this year they were a machine, 11-0. If you're looking for a team, you get a six-pack of them because the Colonial this year was insanely deep. 6 teams from the Colonial made it. You mentioned Maine, Matt. Previous champion, the only team to really break through during this North Dakota State run, James Madison. They made it. They're going to have a tricky road, though, because they have to play in that first round November 24th. But one of those 6 teams has gone through a gauntlet in that conference. Maybe they are prepared to knock off the Bison.
Yeah, Coach, how about you? What stuck out to you?
Well, I think Wofford under first-year coach Jack Conklin, he was extremely successful there. Getting him to the playoffs in his opening season is what they do is just impressive. And Kennesaw State being a 3-year-old program, getting a first-round bye after winning the Big South, they're sitting at 10-1. They're going to be a tough out for North Dakota State later on, probably in the quarterfinals.
Semifinals.
Or semifinals, I should say. There's only one bracket here. Eastern Washington is going to get a tough draw with San Diego, Nicholls State. I think UC Davis, the Fighting Dan Hawkins, they're not playing intramurals, brother. They got a first-round bye. Jacksonville State, East Tennessee State, I think that's going to be a hard-fought battle. East Tennessee State just continuing to improve each and every year since they reestablished football there. Jacksonville State was in the early to mid-2000s was a perennial FCS Power. They're tough out as well. SEMO is one of the surprises. They went 8-3 this year after a good bounce back year. I think they were out of the playoffs, if I remember correctly, last year, and they did not make it. They were watching from their couches. Y'all can double check me on that, but they've been playing extremely well all year long. They do a lot of things solid. So this is probably one of the deepest playoff brackets that I've seen in the FCS. I think any one of these teams can sneak up and make a deep run, and I'm impressed with just about every single one of these teams, especially the ones in the Southeast region.
All right, so my takeaway with the FCS bracket every year is that I still begrudge the Ivy League. Princeton is 10-0. They're ranked 8th in the country, 2 spots ahead of number 6 seed UC Davis, the 10th ranked team in the country right now. They're ineligible for postseason play. Along with 9-1 Dartmouth, the Ivy League should have 2 teams in this playoffs that could both make a run. I would love to see Princeton's offense, quite frankly, go up against a North Dakota State defense, but we'll never.
I'm gonna be a contrarian, Matt. I just like that the Ivy League is consistent. They don't let the basketball players do it. They don't let the hockey players do it. They do. Oh, sorry about that. I retract everything.
Secondly, no surprise, obviously, North Dakota State is the number 1 seed. They are dominant. I mean, this is probably the heaviest favorite they will have been in a long time. But I was a little surprised to see Weber State number 2 and Jacksonville State unseeded. Both of those, that caught my eye a little bit. But Josh, my question for you is, what unseeded team do you think could make a run up to the semis?
Well, I'm going to be a homer and take Northern Iowa. And part of the reason is they get Lamar. Lamar's a nice team, but they're 7-4. That's not like taking on that 9-2 San Diego Torero team that just gave up the 789 rushing yards but still won. It's not the same as taking on one of those big-time colonial powers like James Madison or something. So UNI gets a little bit of an easier team against Lamar. The Panthers are also hosting the game in the Dome. And then they get the 6th seed UC Davis. UC Davis, also a nice team. But again, they're the 6th seed. It's not like taking on a monster team. And I know the Panthers have been very inconsistent. They're 6-5. That's about the definition of being inconsistent. They can't seem to get one foot in front of the other without taking a few steps back. But they upset South Dakota State, and the Jackrabbits are a really good team, and they beat them. They also lost to North Dakota State, but it's 56-31. Terrible day defensively, obviously, but 31 points on the Bison. So I'm looking at the Panthers as an unseeded team. Bias, yes, but I feel like I sold it at least somewhat.
Coach, same question to you.
Same question to me.
What unseeded team do you think could make a run?
I don't know. That's a tough one right there. I think that Jacksonville State has a good shot at it. I think East Tennessee State has a good run at it.
So actually, I'm going to push back up against those 2 teams in particular because they have to go and play Maine. Now, you look at Maine's 8-3 record, you think, nothing great. But Josh, you mentioned how strong the Colonial was this year. Maine won the Colonial, and they won it by winning out in their last 4, including beating Elon, who was in the tournament, and Towson, who was also in the tournament.
Well, Matt, I mean, you're giving a little bit of foreshadowing, but I know your next question was going to be a dark horse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Maine would be my dark horse.
Okay.
I'm very intrigued by this Black Bear team, and they're on the right side of the bracket. If you're going to pick a dark horse, you got to pick someone that doesn't have to play up in the Fargo Dome, because North Dakota State is not losing early in this tournament. They're not dropping a home game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a dark horse could be Colgate. They could potentially sneak up, and I mean, I get that they have to get North Dakota State in the quarterfinals, but they might be rolling by then, and James Madison could be an unranked team or unseeded team that could sneak up and do some damage. They're former champions. They know how to play deep into the playoffs, so look out for them. So,
yeah. A matchup I'd be interested in seeing a little bit further on down the line would be in the semifinals. I would love to see a rematch between Weber State and Eastern Washington. They're number 2 and 3 in the seedings, and they played a really great game out at Weber State this year that Weber State won by 2 points. Eastern Washington still ranked ahead of them in the polls, though, but the committee here clearly used the head-to-head as sort of the justification for putting Weber State as the number 2 seed over Eastern Washington. So I think that would be a great rematch, and not like either of those teams would be necessarily favored to beat North Dakota State, but I think that it could be, a really nice semifinal leading to a bit of a dud of a final. But any other thoughts there, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, just my gut tells me that North Dakota State's going to run away with this thing. They're 11-0. They really didn't have any close calls when you're looking at the bracket. It kind of feels like some of those vintage Miami teams that just ran through the season. That's where this Bison program is right now. So if it's not going to be them, I think you have to look at someone from the other side of the bracket. You've mentioned some of those good teams, Weber State, the Eastern Washington rematch. That's going to be fun. Maine is a little bit of a dark horse. Iowa State is a super-duper Cinderella team. Maybe North Dakota State does get tripped up by previous champion James Madison. I just don't see it. They're too good at home. I think if the unthinkable happens, it's going to have to be down in Frisco in somewhat of a neutral site, although the Bison travel really well, and that's turned into, North Dakota State South.
I really wish that Colgate had been on the other side of the bracket. I think they could have made a run.
Yeah.
I really feel like Colgate should have been a little bit of a higher seed, considering how dominant they were this year. I know they're from a lesser conference, but
one team that I'm curious about, I'm always curious about the Pioneer team that gets in. It's San Diego yet again. They're really good, but the Pioneer Conference, it's a bunch of teams that don't award scholarships. So San Diego, those kids are playing for an education. They're playing for a school that they like, and they're not getting the same reward necessarily as other people. And so I'm always curious about the Pioneer. I think it'd be awesome if San Diego's stunned Eastern Washington in round 2. That'd be awesome.
Guys, it's the playoffs. It could happen. That's my logic usually. I mean, you can't discount chaos in a postseason deal, because you never know. Somebody could catch fire. I mean, I'm not saying Colgate's. I'm not writing them off, but they have an uphill climb. Eastern Washington, they could get tripped up, but again, they're sitting pretty. So, teams you think are in good shape, I think those teams have all the pressure, and pressure can do weird things to you. So keep that in mind as we progress through this playoff run and see. Well, North Dakota State's been hyped up as probably the greatest FCS program ever. They're going to have to live up to that. And, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that year in and year out. And this year they're especially loaded. So they got an extra layer of pressure. So how they respond, can they get through a gauntlet? Can they get through another playoff? James Madison sitting right there. You think they're scared? Nope. So here we go. Buckle up.
It's going to be fun, and the fun starts this Saturday. So, I'll definitely be tuning in. I know you guys will be as well. But other games will...
especially since Iowa plays on Black Friday. How about we give our Final Four and our champ?
Okay, let's do it. Josh, why don't you go first then?
Yeah, I propose it. I'll go first. I got chalk up on the top half. I've got North Dakota State, and I really like that Kennesaw State team. They've been consistent all year long. Coach talked about them at length. They're a great team. So I've got 1 seed North Dakota State, 4 seed Kennesaw State. Lower half of the bracket, I'm going with my dark horse. I'm going with Maine to make the semifinals. And the upper half, as much as I talked about UNI, I'm not going to have mayhem. I am going to have reliable Eastern Washington surviving, especially since they're playing out in the Inferno, your red field. So my final four is North Dakota State, Kennesaw State, Eastern Washington, and Maine.
All right. And Coach?
Oh, and then North Dakota State over Eastern Washington.
Gotcha. Coach?
I like Josh's first matchup in the semifinal, North Dakota State and Kennesaw State. I think Kennesaw State is just what they do offensively is really tricky to prepare for in this scenario, and they're extremely physical on defense. They come up and hit you and really take the game right up to your face. And so I like the physical brand of football they play defensively. I like Weber State to actually advance out of their little quadrant of the bracket. I think they're gonna just barely sneak by Maine. I think that's gonna be probably one of the more entertaining matchups, Maine versus Weber State. I think Weber State's gonna come out ahead in that one. And I'm gonna go with the safe bet of Eastern Washington going through, and then I like Eastern Washington going through to face North Dakota State. I think North Dakota State loses a tough battle, a physical slugfest to Kennesaw State, and Eastern Washington, I think, will fly by Weber State. And then I'm just going to go ahead and pick it. I know I said beware, watch out, anything can happen, but I still am a big believer in North Dakota State, and I think they can get it done. So there you go.
All right. Well, I will go with my final four of on the top half, North Dakota State and Kennesaw State. I think that's pretty easy for me. On the south half of the bracket, though, I've got I'm going to follow Josh on that one. I like Maine here as well, and I think they will actually be playing UC Davis in the semifinals. Nice. When you think Eastern Washington, you think of what? Passing, maybe?
The red turf.
Yeah, the red turf and maybe some air raid offense. Well, funny you should ask, but UC Davis averages 50 yards per game more, passing more than our friends at Eastern Washington.
So it sounds like it could be a shootout.
It's going to be a shootout, and I like Davis in this one. So give me the Aggies and to face off against Maine. However, I see a final of North Dakota State and Maine, with North Dakota State winning, eventually winning out.
Yeah, and to tie a bow on this, I mentioned it in our previous show. Mike London got hired at William & Mary, and I said I want to talk a little bit more about the person he replaced. And so this is a good time to do it because he made a lot of FCS playoff appearances, but the great Jimmy Lagok retiring. He's been at William & Mary since 1980, 249, 194, and 2. Won a whole bunch of division titles, made the playoffs a whole bunch. Their deepest run was back in 2009, when they made it all the way to the semifinals and finished fourth in the nation. 2004 was also a banner season. They were third in the final polls, but this guy was one hell of a coach and spent a lot of time at William & Mary, considering it was also his alma mater where he played quarterback in the late 60s, but a well-deserved retirement and one heck of a career.
All right. Well said, Josh. Well, let's move on to our deep roots for the day. No pop quiz. Everyone gets an A.
Yay.
We're going on vacation. All right. We will start in the American Conference in the battle for directional supremacy in the state of Florida. Coach, do you like UCF's chances of staying undefeated against South Florida?
Yes, I think South Florida is slowly falling apart, even though they rapidly fell apart in their last game. UCF is just a machine right now. Mackenzie Milton is just the one orchestrating all of that, and it is a thing of beauty to watch them play offensive football. And then when they flip over and play defense, it's also a thing of beauty. So I not only think it's going to be, I not only think they're going to win, I think they're going to win big.
All right, Josh.
Well, the thing that I noticed about South Florida, which I don't think I've ever seen this before, but they have an identical points for and points against. They are even Steven. Unfortunately, that hasn't translated to the season they've hoped to have. They're 7-4, and all 4 losses have come the last 4 weeks. So they started out 7-0, and then Houston beat them up, and then Tulane beat them up, and then Cincinnati beat them up, and then Temple beat them up. And that doesn't bode well. You cannot imagine what their confidence is at. It's got to be at an all-time low. Central Florida is going to feast. And the one thing I wanted to say about Central Florida that I thought was interesting was the poll from the Idiotic Committee for the Stupid-Ass Playoffs was released earlier tonight. And the committee said, we spent considerable time talking about – I'm doing an old person voice because they're all old people on the committee. Anyway, we spent considerable time talking about UCF and Ohio State. While UCF may not have the depth of talent of Ohio State, the committee felt that right now, today after week 12, UCF has the more all-round complete team. What was the giveaway? The fact that Ohio State gave up 51 points to Maryland, or that UCF smoked Pittsburgh, who just won a division in the ACC? I'm curious what led them to such an obvious statement.
That's a really good question. They've just been in denial up until now. They can't run away from it anymore. There's no shrouds to hide behind. UCF is legit. I don't know any other way than winning 23 games in a row that you can prove that.
Yeah, I don't know either. UCF would be in my Final Four right now. Josh, you texted about putting them number 1 in your poll over Alabama after this weekend.
I mean, that was kind of a little bit of a joke, but I've got UCF number 2, and they've been number 2 for about the last month and a half.
There you go. All right. Well, we've got our next game that we're going to get to is the game between Oklahoma and West Virginia. The loss by the Mountaineers at Oklahoma State last week really put West Virginia behind the 8 ball to make the Big 12 title game. So they're going to need to upset the Sooners at home in order to make it to Jerry World. Josh, any chance they can pull off the stunner?
I think there's a really good chance because Oklahoma is allergic to defense. They're giving up over 30 points per game, and against good offensive teams, what have they done? Well, Texas dropped 48 on them. Texas Tech in a near win, I should say. Texas Tech scored 46 points. Oklahoma State was a 2-point conversion away from pulling the upset, put up 47 points. Kansas put up 40 a week ago. This defense is terrible, and he's kind of gotten out of the spotlight after some losses, but Will Grier is a heck of a quarterback, and if he wants to get back to New York, here's a showcase game for him to put this Mountaineer team on his back and knock off the Sooners, and it does help that it's out in Morgantown.
Yeah, Coach, I mean, you really like Lincoln Riley. We all know that. But Dana Holgerson's offense, can scheme it up a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both equal in their own right as far as offensive scheming ability. West Virginia just they do a lot of RPO. They do a lot more RPO than Oklahoma does. Oklahoma does a lot of underneath mesh. Oklahoma's more air raid, and West Virginia's more just spread RPO based, and what that means is they put a lot of guys in conflict. They put a lot of defenders in conflict. They'll run a wide zone and post and pick on an outside backer or a safety. Sometimes they'll throw they call it glance, which they will put trips into the boundary. They will run inside zone away from the single receiver, and they'll have that single receiver run a post, and they will they call it glance because they glance at the deep safety, and if he comes off his midline, you just beam it into the post. They're very, very, very creative in their play designs. I really am impressed as to what West Virginia can do. The thing that doesn't impress me about them is I think Oklahoma's more clutch. I think when you have a play that needs to be made, Oklahoma's going to make it because they're used to making it. I think the experience of kind of being in these title hunts year in and year out and these playoff hunts year in and year out is going to serve them better in a matchup like this because West Virginia last week didn't necessarily know how to handle when they were on the ropes against Oklahoma State, and they ended up coming away with a cold hard L. So, can Will Grier bounce back? He's going to put up his numbers. I guarantee you that because Oklahoma, for the first 3 3/4 don't play defense. But when they need a big play, they get it. And so that's why I give Oklahoma the edge in this one.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the Apple Cup, which should be a good one this year in Pullman. Washington State is the last vestige of hope for the Pac-12 making the playoff. Coach, do you think that Chris Petersen's Huskies can slow down Gardner Minshew and the Pirates' air raid?
Well, we thought Oregon could. Nope. We thought Stanford could. Nope. We thought we didn't think Arizona would. We thought Colorado had a chance. Nope. Everybody they've gone against, they have demolished. They scored 7 touchdowns in the first half against Arizona. I don't care who you are. That's impressive. I don't care how bad Arizona is. That's impressive. To do that to a Power 5 conference foe is impressive. And the biggest difference between Washington State this year and last year, last year I would have said, we're looking at fool's gold here because they don't play defense. Well, this year, they play defense. They probably one of the most impressive plays I saw all weekend defensively was an interception. I think the guy's name was something Strong, and he was a safety, and he made he would have gotten on the "you got mossed" segment if it was a little bit longer because he reached back there. The guy had a step, and he just took a big leap and snatched the ball right out of the air, and it was impressive. And that kind of set up their streak. They were up 7-0 at that point, and then that kind of just set everything up for them. So they make very big plays on defense. They can score quickly. They have, and they don't have to run the ball. That's the scary part. They don't have to run the ball, and they can still light you up. So I think they're for real this year. Sometimes I say that just hoping that they're for real, but I truly believe that they are for real this year. And I think Gardner Minshew is better than Luke Falk was.
Josh, do you agree with that assessment by Coach? Like, Gardner Minshew is better than Luke Falk. I think that's. I'm not gonna say that's blasphemous, but I think that's a on a scale of 1 to 10 of the hot take rating, that might be like a 6 or a 7.
I mean, Luke Falk had less around him, and so this team just looks so much better because they are playing defense.
Yeah, Luke Falk never had that defense.
I would also say this is Minshew's first season, so we're getting some amazing first impressions. Let Minshew have his career. Let him lay out his string, see what he does. But in terms of Washington slowing them down, because that's what this story is. I mean, the Huskies are allowing just under 17 points per game. They got a great defense. The last great defense that Wazoo went against was Utah's, and they still put up 28 points. But I have a little bit of a side note that is about this game, and I don't know the last time we've ever talked about the weather this far out from a game, but I got to bring it up. The forecast for Friday night when the game is being played is disgusting. There's a 100% chance of rain, according to Google right now, and around kickoff, it's at about 70%. So that's not good. The wind is supposed to be in the teens. That's not necessarily ideal for an air raid attack. You mix in Washington's stingy defense, mix in some junk weather, that could be a recipe for disaster for the Pirate. And maybe the Huskies eke one out and get back to the Pac-12 title game. They also have been here, done that before. Coach mentioned Oklahoma's used to making the clutch plays. Washington has a lot of players on that team who's won a Pac-12 title, got a lot of players who were in the playoffs recently. They're used to making those big plays. So more pressure is going to be on Washington State. The weather might not cooperate for an air raid offense. You can see an avenue for Washington to win this Apple Cup in what is by far the Pirates' best team at both Texas Tech or Washington State.
Yeah, my one pushback on that would be the fact that Washington's offense is just poor this year. There's no two ways about it. And I think the weather is going to affect them just as much as it's going to affect Washington State. So I still believe in this Washington State team at the end of the day, and I think their defense is just as good as Washington's.
Yeah, but Matt, Washington's offense is a rental car, and the Washington State Huskies are a Ferrari. If it's pouring down rain, what's going to be the faster car?
True. No,
a rental you don't care about, or your super expensive Ferrari?
The rental you don't care about because you're driving that with reckless abandon.
And that's the way the Huskies are going to be playing.
That's where they're going to have to. But and everything. They would love nothing more than to ruin their version of Little Brother's dream season. So, yeah. Well, let's then head over to the game. And for the first time since 2004, Michigan is the favorite in Columbus. Josh, Ohio State has looked, shall we say, shaky over the past few weeks. But do you think that they'll turn up for this one?
Well, they're going to turn up because, A, it's at home. Many good teams have gone into the horseshoe and left wondering what in the hell just happened. It's a house of horrors there. Ohio State, they'll be fired up. They're not out of contention potentially for their own playoff bid. There's all this drama swirling around them, but they are 10-1. But the problem that I have with Ohio State this year is they're like a patient that checked in the hospital that just has so many symptoms. It's like, where do you begin in treating them? Their defense gives up big play after big play after big play, and the Maryland game is a perfect example of that. The Purdue loss, perfect example of that. So do you fix the defense? Their running attack, they cannot get much in the way of consistency. They'll have, a running back not see any holes and just keep getting dropped. And so you're like, oh, well, I guess the running backs are the problem. Then they'll have a game where the offensive line is the problem. And you're like, oh, well, I guess the offensive line is the problem. So what's causing their running game to not be as efficient as we're used to seeing? So there's another symptom. How do you fix that? And then their quarterback situation, Dwayne Haskins is amazing. But Urban Meyer has always made hay with a mobile quarterback. He wants to say that he won a national title with a pocket passer and Chris Leak. Okay, that's true, but you also had Tim Tebow coming off the bench and running a whole lot that year. Dwayne Haskins is the only statue that I've ever seen Urban Meyer have. How is that impacting the offense that he wants to run? And then you get into all of the off-the-field drama that's been going on throughout the season. And it's just like, how does this team get back into gear? Michigan's going to be the more focused team. Michigan is the more complete team, and Michigan has the scariest defense in the Big Ten. So if that running game for the Buckeyes has a down day again, which is easily going to happen based on how good Michigan's defense is, then you're going to have a one-dimensional Buckeyes, and I just don't see how a one-dimensional offense can fare against the Wolverines. So Yes, Michigan is a little bit of a surprise favorite. Yes, I can see Ohio State winning because it's in the horseshoe, and they're still a talented team. But this feels like as good a shot as any for the Wolverines, and I think they take advantage of it.
Coach?
That defense, that Michigan defense just scares the daylights out of me. They are insanely good. And they are on a revenge tour. Last stop, Columbus, Ohio. You mix that with Ohio State being in an absolute mess, just all over the board. They're in a mess defensively. I think that Michigan is not the strongest offense they will have faced all year, but it doesn't matter because they're good enough. And I think Shea Patterson's going to have a good day, or a good enough day, I should say, to eclipse Ohio State. I don't think he's going to need much because I think that defense is going to shut down Ohio State and make things tough. Chase Winovich is one of the best defensive front players in the country. And I really like the way he plays, and I really like the way Rashawn Gary plays on the defensive line. I think he's elite. He's an NFL guy, obviously, and they just got it this year. Just something about it. It's their year, and everything seems to be connecting for them. And
Coach, would you say Michigan's defense has, dare I say, SEC speed?
I would say, yeah. Their defense could fit in our conference. They really could.
Well, speaking of your conference, Coach, and your actual alma mater, it's that time of year again for some good old-fashioned hate.
Clean old-fashioned hate.
Clean
old-fashioned hate.
Well, then.
Yeah, it's clean old-fashioned hate.
Well, there's nothing clean about the rambling record of Georgia Tech.
Nope.
They are heading into Sanford Stadium, taking on your dogs. Any chance Georgia gets stung in an upset?
I mean, there's always a chance in this game with what they do. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Georgia has too many weapons. The last time they visited, they upset us. They scored, I think, 14 unanswered to erase a 13-point fourth quarter deficit, and they ended up victorious in Kirby Smart's first season as head coach. The team has come miles and miles and miles since then. Even as young as Georgia is, I think they are light years better than what they were in 2016. I think you're starting to see Justin Fields emerge. He will play a big role if they let him. Holyfield and Swift. I mean, there's not a whole lot of defenses that could really stop them. So I don't see Tech being able to have much success there either. I think it's going to be one of those scenarios where the score is going to kind of put Tech behind what they want to do, and once the scoreboard gets away from them a little bit, they become discombobulated and they shut down. If we allow them to hang around by turning the ball over, being sloppy, stupid penalties that extend drives, things like that, yeah, there's a chance, because you can't leave a rival hanging around that's hungry, that hates. This is their Super Bowl, so they will have nothing more than to beat Georgia in Sanford Stadium so they can tear up the hedges. That's their tradition. That's what they live for. They could go 0-11 coming into this game, and if they win this game, their season's successful in their minds.
I thought I saw a thing, like a post today, about the schools agreeing to not tear up the hedges or deface property, and I just laughed at it.
Yeah, it ain't gonna happen. If they win, they're tearing the hedges up. That's just going to happen. So you know how you prevent that?
You kick their butt.
You don't let them win.
Yeah.
You just pummel them into submission like you did UMass.
Josh, if you are the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets here, I mean, what is your – I'm not going to ask what your offensive strategy is because we all know what that is. What's your defensive strategy against the team, and how much does it change whether you're facing Justin Fields or David Fromm?
The best defense is good offense, so they need to have their triple option working. They need to dominate time of possession. They got to not just be over 30 minutes. I think they got to be sniffing around 40 minutes time of possession, because Georgia's going to score. We know Georgia's going to score. It's that simple. So don't put your defense in a hole by having a bad turnover. Don't put your defense in a hole by having a bad special teams, whether it's a long return or a blocked kick, things like that. Georgia's going to get theirs. Just don't give them the extra possessions. I think that's what it comes down to. But I will give Georgia Tech some love. They're 7-4. This is a team that's won 4 straight, 6 of their last 7. Their one loss was to a really good Duke team, who's also got 7 wins. Is this Paul Johnson's best Yellow Jacket team? No. Are they better than they were last year? Yeah. So, if Jaquan Marshall's playing really well, if that triple option's possessing the ball, I think they have a fair chance. I wouldn't go anything past like 15%, but it's a rivalry game. Weird things happen. It's not like Georgia Tech is the worst team in the world. They're a pretty decent team. So they're probably a top 30 team if the poll was to expand 5 to maybe 10 teams. I think Georgia Tech's up there.
All right. Well, finally, we're going to get to a nice ranked versus ranked matchup out in the Mountain West. Utah State headed to the Smurf turf. The Aggies undefeated since their opening week loss in East Lansing, and they boast the nation's number 2 scoring offense. Meanwhile, Boise State has won 6 in a row of their own, including defeating a very good Fresno State squad just 2 weeks ago. Josh, are the Broncos the team who will finally take down Utah State in conference play this year?
That is a huge question to ask, and it helps that it's on the Smurf turf. Boise State still plays well at home. I mentioned earlier in the year that it seemed like the mystique might be gone a little bit after they lost to San Diego State. Maybe the mystique came back a little bit once they knocked off Fresno State a couple weeks ago. But if you're Utah State, your offense is humming along. But you've had some moments of, what's going on? Out in Cheyenne, 24-16. Out at Colorado State, they only won 29-24. I'm wondering if something's happening on the road. I'm wondering if something's happening at altitude. Those are very high stadiums. Boise's not as high as those, but they are a high stadium. Utah State has a very good chance to win because their offense is awesome. But it is the Giants of the conference. Boise State is the Ohio State of the Mountain West. It's tough to win there, even in a quote-unquote down year for the Broncos. So it's tough to win there. And the Utah State offense is amazing, but there's tape on them to at least give them some fits. And one of those games was just last week in Fort Collins. So I would personally, if this was a spread formation, I would personally take the Aggies because I love them and I love that offense. But to me, this is like an absolute coin flip. Boise State's not that far behind them.
Wow, that was pretty spot on, actually. So I'm not going to waste any more time.
Well,
I concur wholeheartedly.
Then let's not and head on to spread formations. Gentlemen, coming into the week, I am still in the lead at 500, 32, 32, and 1 after my lovely 5-0 week last week. Coach,
it's fine. I'm warming up. I went 3-2 last week. I'm going to go 10-0 this week.
Well, let's get it started then with Houston and Memphis. A great American Conference matchup. Houston getting Ed Oliver back, but they lost De'Aaron King. Josh, which side are you on?
Well, what's the line? You didn't give the line.
I thought I did. Memphis 7-point favorite at home.
Yeah. The De'Aaron King injury is that to me is the deal breaker. Ed Oliver's amazing, but we just don't know what Houston is going to be offensively now. The last time out, Houston won against Tulane, but the previous 2 games without Ed Oliver, they gave up 45 points and 59 points. Ed Oliver is going to be a great NFL player. I'm not sure he's like going to magically take this defense from giving up 59 points to like them giving up 10 points. So I'm going to take.
I don't think there's a player in the country that could do that.
No, so I'm going to take Memphis to cover.
Coach?
Ooh, the injuries and just the uncertainty. I'm going to agree with Josh here. I'm going Memphis.
Yeah, I've got Memphis in this one as well because of the De'Aaron King injury. Next, we've got Boston College, 7.5-point favorites at home against Syracuse, who are coming off of a clunker in Yankee Stadium. But speaking of clunkers, BC had one of their own at Florida State last weekend. So, Josh, what side are you on for this one?
Well, I think it's going to come down to Eric Dungy, the Syracuse quarterback. What is his health status for the game? They hope to have him. That's a kind of a generic thing to say. So I am going to go with BC because they did get their quarterback back, and he played really well against Florida State. They just had a couple of missed opportunities, one that I highlighted in the quick slant in our recap show. So I'm going to go with the Eagles.
All right, Coach.
We hope to have them. Sounds like their athletic department is telling the fans to duck and cover and prepare for impact because we're going down. And
to be fair, he is listed as the co-starter this week.
That's not good enough for me. Give me the Eagles.
Yeah, I'll take the Eagles because of Anthony Brown. They've got their quarterback. Syracuse doesn't. We will now move on to the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe. Quick bone to pick with ESPN. They did a lovely guide to all of the rivalry games this weekend and decided not to talk about this one for some reason. They decided it was not worthy. They picked, I think it was 17 other games that are being played this weekend, did not decide to talk about the most played game between two schools in the country. Wisconsin 10-point favorites at home.
But Matt, can it really be a rivalry when Wisconsin's won every matchup since 2004 and they've won all but two dating back to 1995? I think that is a sign that Wisconsin has just turned this into the season finale. It's really not a rivalry anymore.
Okay, well, that's fair. And I believe the reason they haven't lost since 2004 is because that was the fall in which I enrolled in the school. And so since I officially became a Badger, we have not lost the axe. So, Josh, what side are you going on this one?
Man, I don't know what to make of this Gopher team because in the middle of the year, they lost 4 in a row and just looked like absolute crap. Then they beat Indiana, and you're like, oh, they've finally woken up. Well, a week after that Indiana game, they gave up 55 points to Illinois. And then you're writing them off again, and you're like, well, their goose is cooked. And then they blow out Purdue by 31 points. And you're like, oh, okay, well, now they host Northwestern. Here's a chance for them to make a statement over the divisional champions, and they lay an egg. So I don't know what in the world to make with the Gophers. The problem is Wisconsin's proven to not be a very good team this year. And so I think Wisconsin wins, but I'm having a hard time seeing them cover a double-digit spread.
Okay, Coach.
3 letters are going to make the difference in this game. A big difference.
What are those?
J.
Mm-hmm.
T.
Mm-hmm.
T.
Oh.
J. T. T.
Funny you should say that.
Him the rock, and you will win big against Minnesota. Maybe not against some other people, but you'll win big against Minnesota.
Yeah,
Give me the Badgers.
Yeah, this game is all about Jonathan Taylor. He is the nation's leading rusher, and everyone knows it. They're making a push for him to make it to New York despite the pretty awful season the team has had as a whole. I'm predicting 34 carries, 288 yards, and 3 more touchdowns in a Badger win by 20. Next, we will head to Josh. What do we refer to the Nebraska-Iowa game as?
It's called the Heroes game.
what should it actually be called?
It should be called no longer rivalry game because I think mercifully it's getting kicked off this stupid Black Friday schedule, and I believe Iowa is going back to playing our rightful end of the season team, Minnesota, next year. So it's called the bye-bye game and melt down the trophy while you're at it.
Yeah, I like that. Nebraska has been a quote-unquote feel-good story of the second half of the season, but Josh, do you think that Iowa will be able to cover the 10 points that they are giving at home?
Well, Nebraska's offense has been really good all year long, and they've won 4 of their last 5. Their one loss was the close one at Ohio State, but again, Ohio State has had so many issues defensively that it kind of made sense Nebraska would score on them. So then you have to look at those 4 wins. Minnesota, I don't know if that's an impressive win. Bethune-Cookman, well, it's an FCS team. Illinois, that's not an impressive win. And last week, their offense no-showed, but they won 9-6 with 3 field goals because Michigan State has about the worst offense I've ever seen. I believe Michigan State has popped in tapes of 1930s offenses and has attempted to run that. So this is the first team that has some resemblance of competency, and Nebraska's played since Northwestern, who they lost to. So I think Iowa's going to win, and then it gets to will they cover the spread, and I joked last week that can Iowa even score 14 points? And they beat Illinois 63-0, and it's the worst game in Illinois football history. So I'm going to make the exact same joke. Can Iowa even score 10 points? And then I'm going to do what I did on my blog and go ahead and pick Iowa.
Coach.
I kind of lost you in all of that, but I like Iowa.
It's like a Brian Ferentz thing, Coach. You're just not operating in the same plane to know what I'm talking about.
Well, we did for 1 year with Brian Schottenheimer, so I feel you. But I think Nate Stanley's going to have a big day. What's the spread again?
The spread is 10 points.
I really like Iowa, but I feel like that's way too much for Brian Ferentz offense. And I think Nebraska's an improving team, so I think I'm going to pick Iowa to win, Nebraska to cover.
Coach, the proper thing to say is, can Iowa even score 10 points in a game?
Can they even score 10 points? Can they score 10 points in practice?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You know, like I said, Nebraska's kind of been a feel-good story, but I think it comes to an end here. I got the Hawkeyes by 17. Next, we've got Texas, 15-point favorites on the road. The Bevo List Longhorns get to head to the track. Josh, who you got here?
Well, if this had been, a different scenario for Texas, I would have taken Kansas and talked about David Beatty's last game and how Kansas was already in Texas's head because they weren't allowing the cow on the track, and just make it funny because all my picks have been terrible. But the fact of the matter is Texas has the tiebreaker over Oklahoma. They can win this game to get to 7-2 in conference. If Oklahoma loses to West Virginia, Texas is going to the title game. If Oklahoma beats West Virginia, Texas is going to the title game. But they need to take care of their own business. And so I think Texas is going to be very fired up because they have to TCOB. They're going to blow out Kansas, and they're going to cover.
All right, Coach.
TCOB, CYA, and BYOB. Give me the Longhorns.
Yeah, I really want to back the Jayhawks here, but I just can't do it. Like Josh said, Texas knows that they need to win the Big 12 this game in order to make the Big 12 title game. Longhorns are going to pour it on. Finally, Rutgers on the road to finish up the season. They are in East Lansing, who are somehow, some way, Michigan State is 27-point favorites at home. Josh, can they even score 27 points?
Well, I think Vegas actually meant to make 27 the over-under. Let me just run through Michigan State's offensive totals this year. Utah State, 38 points. Arizona State, 13. Indiana, 35. Central Michigan, 31. And it starts to dip. Northwestern, 19. Penn State, 21. Michigan, 7. Purdue, 23. Maryland, 24. Ohio State, 6. Nebraska, 6. They're running like the inverted wishbone. I don't know what they're running. It's so old-fashioned and so just awful. They have 2 quarterbacks, neither one of which can hit the broadside of the barn. They can't score 27 points. This is going to be like a classic Michigan State win the game 24-0, but they have the inability to score 27 points.
Coach?
I've actually and I can't get these minutes back, but I've actually watched Michigan State. It's ugly. It's bad. And it's got to be bad enough for me to pick Rutgers to cover.
You know what? On top of that, Michigan State has nothing to play for.
Whoa. I mean, they could improve from the New Era Pinstripe Bowl and try and get to the GoDaddy Mobile Bowl. Come on, dude.
The Idaho sack of potatoes.
They play the Mobile Bowl in the home stadium of the Mobile Bay Bears.
God, I hope so.
Yeah. Rutgers to cover.
Yeah.
I think that's going to do it, Josh, unless there's anything else.
Yeah, we buried the lead.
Lies.
Yeah, we did.
Lies. I don't believe it. I don't.
So there is an SEC game. It features our lovable Arkansas Razorbacks. And you can't make this stuff up. Arkansas suspended a couple defensive backs, 2 of them, because they were talking up some Mississippi State Spirit Squad members prior to the game. Suspended both of them. They have about
Spirit Squad. They sound
like the dance team. They're chatting up some Stark Vegas girls. They get suspended. They have a combined 20 starts between them. So they're 2 pretty important defensive backs. Fortunately, they take on Missouri, and I really haven't been following the Tigers much this year. Do they have a good passing offense?
I've heard.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I've heard there's a guy that plays quarterback for them that may or may not get drafted in the first round this year in the NFL draft.
So I think it's safe to say Missouri is going to finish the season 8-4, and Arkansas is going to debut their new coach with the old Ofer 0-8 in conference play.
All right, Coach.
Did they at least successfully go on a date with these girls, or hit them up, or something?
No, the ESPN write-up just says that they were kind of flirting with these girls before the game. The Spirit Squad's out there probably practicing their routine. These kids are supposed to be doing their drills, their warm-ups for Arkansas. But when you're like 2-9 and 0-7, like, how do you stay like keyed in to an important game in Stark Vegas? Like, and I feel like in the middle of a stadium, it couldn't have been that like ridiculous of some flirting. Was it stupid? Yeah, probably. But like, what an overreaction by the coach. Unless the story develops and it turns out they were doing something even more obnoxious. But it sounds like all they did was chat them up a little bit and have some flirty moments.
Oh, good Lord. Coach, any final words from you?
I think that about does it. This Mucinex is starting to kick in really good.
Well, on that note, on behalf of our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton, here in Nashville, Tennessee, and our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook, up there in Chicago, Illinois, this is the professor in the Music City saying so long and see you next time on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast.
Congrats.
Can they even score?
Congrats to the Red Hawks. They won tonight, 6-6. Bowl game.
Yeah.
Miami.
Thanks for listening to the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. To get in touch with the show, email us at illegalmotionpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at illegal_motion.